In this video I'm going to run through the absolute basics of setting up planetary interaction and producing goods. First thing we need to talk about is skills. The first skill you're going to need is remote sensing. You have to get this skill to level 3 in order to unlock planetology, which is required to find the resources that you're going to want to mine to produce the goods. The higher you get your planetology skill and your advanced planetology skill, the easier and more accurate you will be at finding the raw materials that you're going to need. Next, command center upgrades. Every building or link that you construct on a planet will use your command center's CPU and power limit. The more you upgrade your command center upgrade skills, the higher you can upgrade your command centers. This means more CPU and more power, so you'll be able to build more buildings. Lastly, interplanetary consolidation is really only important if you plan to run more than one colony. Every level you get interplanetary consolidation up, it gives you one extra planet up to a maximum of 6. Once you have the skills that you need, the next step is to decide what you're going to produce, either on your own or a product that your corporation can use. And there's a website that can help you figure out what you're going to produce and what planet you're going to need. I'll try to figure out how to put a link to that in the bottom of the video. Once you get your planet set up, you'll produce raw materials. These raw materials will then be converted into processed materials by a Tier 1 factory. Tier 1 factory products can then be combined and used to produce refined commodities, which then can be used to manufacture specialized commodities and finally advanced commodities. This website is very useful for figuring out what raw materials each planet provides and what products those raw materials can be combined to make. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be setting up a storm planet colony to produce coolant. I will be back with you in a minute once I arrive at the planet that I have chosen. Okay, so here we are in orbit over the storm planet that I'm going to be colonizing. Off camera, I went ahead and I bought a storm command center off the market. These are not very expensive. And first step, go into your planet viewing mode, and you want to scan for the resources that you're going to need, which, since I'm going to be making coolant here, I'm going to need ionic solutions and aqueous liquids. So, start scanning for aqueous liquids. Now, you click the scan tab, click which resource you want, and then there's a little slider here. And what this does is this shows you the concentration of resource that you're looking at. Like right now I have the aqueous liquid selected, and I've adjusted the slider to where I'm only getting one little concentration of white. That means that's the highest concentration of aqueous liquids that I can see on this planet right now at my current planetology skill level. The higher you have that skill, the more accurate this map will be. Now I also need ionic solutions, which the distribution of that is a lot worse on this planet. So I have to adjust the slider down. Oop, there we go. So this looks like I have a nice deposit of that in the northern hemisphere. None of that in the southern hemisphere near the aqueous liquids that I was looking at. So we're going to, there we go, look around, see if we can find any aqueous liquids closer in a lower concentration. Obviously I can get a lot more down here in the southern hemisphere, but because the only source of ionic solutions that I can find in a fairly high concentration is up here, I don't want to mine the aqueous liquids in the south and the ionic solutions in the northern part of the planet, because the links between those two mines will be absolutely long and will eat my command center's CPU and power. So you want to get the resources that you're going to mine as close as possible to minimize CPU and power usage. Which I have a deposit right there of aqueous liquids that I kind of like, and it's not too far from the ionic solutions. So once you've got that down, the next step is to go in and drop your command center. And you want to try to position your colony kind of between the resources that you're going to be mining. Why do I not have the... Oh, because it's in a container. That's right. There we go. Now I can plop this guy down. There it is. Alright. So, now, we've got a command center on the ground, and I'm going to go ahead and upgrade it to the maximum amount that I can run. Now we need to talk about facilities. There are a number of different facilities. You will have your extractor units. Now these control the actual extraction of the various resources. And you'll notice that there is a dark area around the extractor head. This represents the maximum range that you can place an actual extraction well from the extractor head. You want to put the extractor head as close to your command center as you can and still encompass the area in which you are going to be mining, because in order to do any mining you have to create a link between your extractor and your command center, and it will show you the distance the link is going to run, how much power and how much CPU it's going to take. Now, it's important to note that you do not have to connect your buildings directly to your command center. You can just for example, create a link between your extractor and a factory, and then from the factory to another building. and you can route through that building and your material doesn't have to stop there. Also, it's important to note that your command center, once it's placed, does not actually need to be connected to any other facilities. The command center will act as a launch platform. You can launch materials into orbit with it. But you can also build a spaceport which will perform this function as well and launch materials into the orbiting customs office. The launch pad also provides the additional function of providing storage. So it's advantageous to use those when you can. Aside from that, it's important to remember that other than your extractors, you'll want to put your facilities as close to each other as you possibly can to save on CPU and power requirements. So I've just slapped down 2 extractors, 2 basic factories, and 1 advanced factory. And I am going to create links between all of these. Now, as you can see, I'm only using, 19 MW of power and 27 TF of CPU power on, these 2 small links, but between this extractor and this advanced factory, the power and CPU requirements go up. So, build as close as you can. Can't state that enough. Once you have a basic setup, you'll want to decide a few things. If you have your product, you know what you're going to be making, you need to go in and activate your extractor units. Now, once you have your setup, you've got your extractor units, you bring up this control panel. You select the material that this particular extractor will be extracting. This one, I'm going to be extracting ionic solutions out of it. So I need to install a number of extractor heads. I'm going to run 3. And this will take some playing around with to determine the best configuration. Once you have your number of extractors set, you need to decide your extraction area size. And really what this is how long you're going to be running your extractors. I generally run mine for 1 day and 12 hours. The longer you run your extractors, the more material they will extract from any given area. I know people will sometimes set theirs for a week. That's fine. If you can manage that, do so. I'm the kind of person that if I let it sit for a week, I'm going to forget about it. And then it'll sit idle for another week until I come back to it and remember, oh yeah, my planet's not producing. So, you've got your extractor heads. You've got your area size. You can go ahead and look here in this grid. What you've got is the maximum number of units that this particular setup might produce over a length of time. The first cycle of this unit will pull 4,611 units, and then it'll fall off a little bit, and then I'll start extracting a little bit more and go, downhill from there. It's important to pay attention to this because it took me several days to figure this out. You'll notice that as I move this around, the scale on the left-hand side changes, which changes the size of the bars. Now, I had not noticed that scale change at first, and whenever I'd start moving around, I'd see the bars would drop, and I'd think I was getting less. But I'm actually getting more because the scale on the side has changed. I felt like a total idiot, but it's something that's easy to overlook. Once you've got this set up, click Install, Submit. Your extractor will begin extracting resources. And I've forgotten to put a launch pad in. My bad. So I'll link that up real quick. Come on. Create a link. There we go. Alright, so now my extractor control unit is producing resources. And in 30 minutes, it's going to give me my first lump of resources. Well, what you need to do now is to go into the Products tab and find the product that this unit is making. And you'll see it says not routed. That means in 30 minutes, this extractor unit will collect 6,248 units, and it will have nowhere to go, and it'll just throw it outside. So you want to create a route and tell it where to go. And I'm going to use the storage facility in this launch pad. So I click the create route, click the launch pad, and it's saying that it will move this amount of resource every time it can. Submit that. And now you get this little glowing trail that shows you that everything this is producing will go here. And then I will do the same over on this one, just real quick, for my aqueous liquids. Close enough. Install, submit, then take the product, route it to there, and done. So now, if we go over here to the Storm Launchpad and look at routes, we'll see that we have aqueous liquids and ionic solutions incoming. Now, in order to go further, let's look this up. Alright, so I have aqueous liquids and ionic solutions incoming. Now, coolant requires those products be refined into electrolytes and water. So I'm going to set up, that's my advanced one, a basic industry to produce water. I'm going to install that job. And then, once I get that job installed, I'm going to create a route so that the water will be stored in the launch pad. Now, in order to produce water, this needs 3,000 units of aqueous liquids. In order to give it that, we have to go into the storage. And if you have aqueous liquids or ionic solutions or anything actually stored in the facility, you can create a route by selecting that resource, clicking create route, and telling it where you want to go. But it is also possible to create a route by clicking on the routes, seeing what's incoming, and then create a new route out. Just like that. Click submit to finalize. Now, the launch pad has aqueous liquids outgoing. It's shipping those resources to this tier 1 factory. And then, whoops, we'll set up this other one to produce electrolytes, which requires an input of our ionic solutions. Create a route so that the output is going back to the launch pad. Don't ever want to forget that. And then in here, we will route our ionic solutions to the other factory. Submit that. So now, once these deliver their resources to the launch pad will redistribute those resources to the factories. The factories will then redistribute their outputs to the launch pad. And finally, at the advanced facility, I can install coolant, which requires electrolytes and water. Create a coolant route, create a route to ship the coolant back to the launch pad, and then from the launch pad, I will create a route to ship the electrolytes to the advanced factory and water to the advanced factory. So, that's a basic setup. Extractors will send raw materials to the launch pad, which will then send those raw materials to the tier 1 factories, which will manufacture tier 1 goods, ship those back to the launch pad, where those tier 1 goods will be shipped to the advanced factory, which will produce tier 2 goods and then ship those back to the launch pad. Once you have your tier 2 goods, if you want, and you have the command center upgrades, you can install, well, actually on this planet I don't think you can. But in theory, you could install a tier 3 and even a tier 4 industry if you have the command center, CPU, and power. Other than that, once you have the materials in storage, you can launch them into orbit to the Planetary Customs Office, where you can collect them, sell them on the market, move them to another planet, and then import those resources to an advanced facility to construct even more advanced commodities. I hope this video is useful and teaches you a few basics. There are a lot more advanced tips. I'm not even going to pretend to be a professional at this. You'll develop your own strategies, your own quirks. This is just to get you started. Hope it was helpful. Fly safe, people.